said he.
Okay.
Okay. You're on planning and zoning with him too, so
I am.
I might have you introduce the TSCA agreement then, under new business. We'll go to Barry first, if Jim's
Okay.
not still here, and see if he can.
Okay, so you're talking about just introducing it? Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry to be starting a little bit late, but as you can see, our trustees are still coming in, so we're expecting one more any moment. But in the meantime, let's call this meeting to order to honor our nation's heroes, and especially to honor the men and women in uniform who serve and protect our community. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Fitzgerald, may we have the roll call, please?
Certainly, Madam President. Trustee Hansen.
Here.
Trustee Tibbet.
Here.
Trustee Allen.
Here.
Trustee Rudolph.
Here.
Trustee Zimmerman is on the way.
No, he's absent.
Absent.
Mhm.
And Trustee Tyrrell is on.
Yes. Thank you. So Ed, thank you for phoning in from your business meeting out in Baltimore. We're glad to see you, and hope you're having better weather than we're having here. Thanks for
Slightly,
joining.
yes, thanks.
Good. Okay. Having read the agenda, does any trustee have an addition or deletion? Hearing none, we'll move on to our citizens' comments. Tonight, we have a special guest in the audience. Bobby Vespa is here to address the board. Mr. Vespa is with him, so if you would like to approach the board now.
My name is Bobby Vespa. I live in 906 Lindvik Court. I'm with Boy Scouts Troop 216, and I'm working on my citizenship in the community merit badge. I know that seniors have trouble shoveling is an important issue for our community. What is being done about it, and how can young people and Boy Scouts help?
Thank you for that question. It's very timely since we had so much snow today. And your municipal services, Public Works, clear our streets, and they do a very good job, but they cannot get to the private driveways of our elderly and other people who may not be able to shovel. So that would be a great service. I would think it would require some coordination and organization on the part of the Boy Scouts in order to get the word out to our seniors that this service is being offered. Does anybody else have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to our new business. We do have 2 items under new business for discussion tonight. I'll reverse the order of them if that's okay with you, Trustee Allen, and the first one will be the bid results high service pump replacement.
Thank you, President Gallagher. Consistent with what we talked about 2 weeks ago, the Municipal Services Department did get 2 bids that were opened last week. The low bidder was Omni Pump Repairs, and I guess I should take a step back. These were for the pumps to move water from the water treatment plant to the 2 towers. This is a budgeted item. It's actually budgeted at $120,000 for this year. The estimate we got from HR Green would have been $97,500, but the low bidder, as I mentioned, was Omni Pump Repairs at $78,560. We had talked about this in committee before the bids came in and had recommended moving it forward due to scheduling and timing. So at this point, if there aren't any questions, it is on the omnibus for us to vote on this evening.
Okay. And that was the timing issue, the bid went out on January 24th, yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Then we'll put that on the omnibus.
Thank you.
Okay. And now the second new business item is an agreement with TSCA and Associates regarding a North Side TIF plan. Trustee Terrell is not yet here, so Trustee Rudolph, if you'd like to just
Sure.
introduce it.
Yes, thank you, President Gallagher. We are wishing to explore the possible creation of an additional or a new North Side TIF district. And in order to begin that exploration, we would like to engage experts to help us with that process. I believe we're going to have some additional presentation from that here this evening.
Yes, thank you. We have Mike Hoffman here from TESCA. In your packets was quite a bit of information on the TIF. This is, we're doing the same exact routine that we did when we approved the South Side TIF. So that was also TESCA and Associates. Marty, did you have anything else to add?
Sure, we have a short presentation from the three of us, very short, but I can take you through that and give you a little bit of background. And as you said, President Gallagher, in the past we created a TIF on the south side of the tracks that generally runs along Burlington from Johnson down to Spring Rock Park and kind of hugs the backyards of the businesses along there. And that's a TIF that's just been ramping up. It's a pay-as-you-go TIF essentially versus a TIF that would be funded by bonds that you hear about in other communities. And the impetus for that was Foxford coming along, but also some benefits that we could gain hopefully in the future from some of that increment of those funds to be there for public improvements or possibly for facade rehab on a building or other uses that are allowed by TIF law. So back when that TIF was formed, there was some consideration about looking at the north side. There was an issue with the railroad and its PIN or property index number that we were concerned about at that time, and plus we just wanted to get started with the south side. Now, with President Gallagher nudging us along and suggesting, and staff also believing it'd be a good idea to explore this idea, we started that several months ago, just talking about it, and then made it more formal with bringing the idea to the Planning and Zoning Committee last month. And so now what we have before you is a proposal from TESCA, which would be identical to what was done a few years ago for the South Side TIF, and legal services from Kleinthorpe and Jenkins that adhere to state law that is clearly spelled out on the steps that have to be followed. So one of the things I mentioned, a couple of things I mentioned in the memo that I wanted to touch upon, part of the impetus for the north side is also that the board designated a priority on implementing some of the streetscape improvements that'll be necessary down the road on the north side as well. And that's a thing that is really difficult to fund because unlike the platforms where there's federal money and money focused on transit, there isn't for typical streetscape that you would have on a public street. So that's just one example of where some of that increment could go to. There's, as I said, on the south side, the facade rehab idea that could happen there that's popular in many communities. There's also rehabilitation of public buildings, property acquisition, a number of different uses that those funds could go to. This TIF we would anticipate would be similar to the south side of pay-as-you-go. We're not something like downtown Arlington Heights where there's a critical mass of commercial property that would be within the TIF. We're obviously a smaller downtown, so that funding is not going to go through the roof each year, but it is going to slowly ramp up the way it did on the south side. So this TIF is shown in the exhibit that I gave you on the draft map, generally along Hillgrove Avenue from Howard on the east down to the Public Works Garage on the west, essentially, again, kind of hugging the rear yards of several properties as it makes its way from east to west. So tonight, Mike Hoffman, Vice President with TESCA Associates, is going to take you quickly through a little bit of the proposal, if you've got any questions, and then follow up by Mike Jerusik on the legal process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
Good evening.
Good evening. So the process actually is pretty well defined in state statute, so we have to kind of follow this similar process. So pretty much every TIF follows the same path. And that is essentially, first thing we need to do really is we'll have a kickoff meeting, but then after that we do an eligibility study to see whether this meets the criteria in state statute or not. Either way, we'll kind of stop and take a hold of breath at that point and confirm that it meets criteria or it doesn't. If assuming that it does, then we proceed with the redevelopment plan. That redevelopment plan will do some financial projections to see how much revenue we would anticipate to see out of this potential TIF area. It'll define what we can spend funds on. It'll make the case that if we don't create the TIF, redevelopment's not going to happen in this area, and it'll provide all the tool, and it'll also look at the impact on the other taxing bodies. So those are the kind of key pieces of the redevelopment plan. And then the last phase of the project really is kind of taking it through the public process. So we have to have a public hearing on this. We have to have joint review boards before we do that to let the other taxing bodies know what's going on. And lots of notification requirements in the TIF Act. Mike could probably describe those a little bit better for you, but very specific things. We have to notify everybody in the TIF district. People within 750 feet of the TIF district need to be notified. We have to create reinforce the fact that anybody can come in and sign up to be on an interested parties registry. So a lot of procedural things that need to be taken care of in this process. But we're with you every step of the way, and look forward to working on it again. Tesca has done, I don't know, 150 TIFs or something like that. So we've got significant experience in this area, and look forward to working with you again on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, from a legal process, we're going to take the same steps that we took creating the South Side TIF, which is we've already have a TIF registry, but we'll notify people to make sure that they're able to sign up, if they're not already signed up. But we have every taxing district in our jurisdiction already on that registry. You're gonna, if the TIF eligibility report is a positive one and warrants moving forward, then the decision is redevelopment plan and project plan, as Mike discussed. Then we look at adopting an ordinance to establish a public hearing and to set a joint board of review meeting. Those two things will happen. Joint board of review will meet, make a recommendation to the board. This village board will have a public hearing and decide, do you go forward and create the TIF or not? If you do, the board will adopt an ordinance establishing the TIF. That'll be the enabling statute, and then we'll do certain filings with that ordinance with county to formally establish the TIF, and then it will proceed the same way that the Southside TIF has. Marty mentioned railroad track pin. What's important with that comment is the two TIFs will be separated by the railroad tracks, which has its own property index number. Why we want to include the railroad property index number in our north side TIF is we want the two TIFs to touch because we want to have the ability, it's called portability. You want to be able to, if it makes financial sense, to be able to have the two TIFs share TIF increment for purposes of incentivizing a project, and that's legal. You're allowed to do that, but they have to touch. And so this TIF, will have that option of including the railroad pin in its description. So if the north side does get created, that would be something that staff would recommend. So you do have that connectivity, that adjacent connectivity, so there could be portability. And why you would want to do that is we have a pay-as-you-go TIF on the south side. That is actually generating more and more increment each tax period that goes by. That may have a bucket of money 3-5 years down the road that could help jumpstart a project on the north side TIF. And then once that north side TIF starts generating increment, it can pay back the south side TIF. It's almost like you can loan money. It can be a repay obligation, or it could be a no repay obligation, but it would give the board and future boards the flexibility to manage both TIFs depending on which one's performing better or is performing earlier than the other. But those are really the procedural steps, just a public hearing, a couple public meetings along the way, and then a decision as to, does it meet the eligibility criteria? And then the board has to make, that decision, yes or no, and it adopts an ordinance if it finds that it does meet the eligibility criteria, and your TIF is created.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have some.
Okay.
Has there been any even preliminary discussions with the school districts to see if they would be supportive of this or objectionable?
Not significantly yet. I mean, I've had a phone conversation with Dr. Kilray at LT and played phone tag with Dr. Barnhart, and
And then maybe for Director Turi, there's two maps in here. Do we have any idea of like the EAV of the parcels that are covered here, at least kind of a preliminary view?
We could get that information.
And like what has changed maybe in 5 years? I guess my concern is that, you know, the south one had an obvious inflection point with Foxford. This one, it's just a little bit harder to see the vision, unless there's some planned development.
Oh, we could get that information.
Okay, perfect. And then the one thing that was confusing to me is, Attorney Jurusik, when you mentioned the south could share with the north, as I recall, when we did the south, it was to stay on it was planned for the south side. So that feels like that's a difference in what we kind of communicated when we did the south TIF. And I don't know, if it's just certainly a timing issue of moving it from one to the other. But I guess I have a little bit bigger concern if it's something where the south is funding the north, or maybe it's independent, but it just sort of seems like that could get kind of confusing down the road. And I guess this goes back to something with Marty. One of the things I think would be really helpful is I think we're still trying to figure out the rules of how the money would be applied coming out of the south, like when property owners or business owners or even staff wants to do a project, who gets priority if there's not enough funds. And so I could just, I think it would be helpful if we kind of knew what sort of ground rules there would be so there's not squabbles down the road like, oh, we thought we want to do a repair on Burlington or we want to do a repair on Hillgrove, who gets priority, and how is that going to be resolved? I don't know if that's been discussed much at the staff level, but I think that would be helpful to see before I would be comfortable kind of moving forward to the consulting and the consulting fees.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at it north and south, but to me, it's downtown improvements. It's the whole area without really dividing it. But that's certainly something we can hash out as this goes along. This is just a preliminary plan to find some of these very elementary questions before we move forward, like if it even qualifies.
Well, no, I don't disagree. It's just we communicated that this was for the South District, and now we're changing what we may say is the use of it. And so to me, it just sort of feels like it warrants, just to make sure communications that people are agreeable to that.
Right, and I didn't mean to imply that I was disagreeing with you. That may be the direction that we want to go, and we can certainly make that clear in any kind of legal language that we have with the North TIF, if we want to keep it separate. I think Mike said that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. You have the ability to have both TIFs connect each other, to have that statutory allowable portability. It's an economic device, it's a funding device, it's a timing device, doesn't have to be used. If you were to create a north side TIF because it met the criteria and you did not include the railroad parcel, then the board for 23 years would not have that flexibility and option to do the portability. Back when we originally talked about creating the first TIF, we did talk about creating a north side and a south side TIF, but it was decided that there was a more immediate need on the south side with the Tischler property and that project, and that the north side would be revisited. And the issue with portability, again, it's a policy decision, and the TIF Act, allows increment to be spent within its individual jurisdictions, and if you have the portability aspect, then the statute allows you to move funds to one TIF, connecting TIF to another, if it's warranted. Under the Act, it's got to be for a TIF eligible expense. It can be to prepay something if the other TIF is not performing as well because it's a newer TIF. It's really a financial mechanism to especially help pay-as-you-go TIFs because they take longer to start generating cash and they're more project dependent. And I think the Northside TIF, may have a slower ramp-up period because it doesn't have an immediate Tischler project but it does have, or at least the staff will articulate the public improvement projects that could benefit from the TIF, the commercial projects that could benefit from the TIF.
And President Gallagher, if I may,
Yeah.
to continue on what Attorney Jurczyk just mentioned, one thing that would be defined, I think in a little more detail this time than last time, to your point, Trustee Allen, is that in the preparation of a redevelopment plan within this, it's one of the objectives under Phase 3. Last time, we had just recently completed the downtown redevelopment plan, so that kind of served as the base for this. Some things have changed, and some new information, some new property owners have come to bear with with property. We would define those objectives so maybe that there's not as much concern, not that there has been, that I've heard of, about who gets money first. There hasn't been that kind of concern just yet, but the projects that we would recommend at staff level for the board to consider could be generally prioritized, whether it's streetscape money, or if it's for private property to improve a set of facades or a specific developer incentive. We can start to help prioritize those, which makes sense, and we did that last time in the form of the downtown plan, but this time we can do that within here too. I mean, that's common.
Yeah, thank you, Director Scott. That makes sense, because there's to me it's sort of like a sequencing thing, because we've had a lot of consulting reports, and it seems like they have a shelf life, and
Right.
so
Sure.
the closer it is for the need to be there, as to time when the consulting report would be done, just seems to make sense. And I know this is all draft and preliminary, and I appreciate your comment about portability and flexibility. That does make some sense, but there's 2 maps in here, and there's a difference of about 7 properties right on Central. So, for example, again, we don't have to go into it. It's also this draft preliminary, but there's probably some logic as to why those are kind of being reviewed or considered differently. And so it's just, to me, it's just a transparency communication thing, just to make sure there's, if there's our concerns about how it'll be used, where it'll be used, when it will be used, that basically kind of flushed out, before we start throwing. I mean, 40,000 isn't a ridiculous amount of money for the value that they're providing, but it's just to understand how it will be used before we, or at least for me, before we commit to it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? And I'd like to welcome Trustee Terrell. Thank you for
I apologize.
No, not at all. Welcome. Any other questions or comments? Nope. So steps forward now, Director Scott?
If the board is agreeable, we would bring it back at the first meeting in February for action.
Okay.
So that then we can start the work to get the process going with Phase 1.
Okay. Everybody in agreement on that? Okay.
Pending
Right.
additional clarification for me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll do that then. Thank you very much. Moving on, the explanation of the omnibus. The Illinois state statutes allow a municipality to collectively vote on a group of ordinances, resolutions, and other motions such as awards of contract, appointments, etc. This is known as an omnibus vote. All the items contained on the omnibus vote list have been previously discussed by the President and Board of Trustees on at least one occasion, and often on several occasions. By placing them on the omnibus vote list, a single vote may be taken to approve them. A trustee may remove any item from the list and have it discussed and voted on separately prior to the omnibus vote. Is there any such request this evening? Hearing none, and because of the length of the omnibus, we will ask Trustee Terrell to read it instead of Trustee Timick.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I move that the following ordinances, resolutions, and motions as contained on the meeting agenda for January 28th, 2019 be adopted and/or approved under an omnibus vote. Agenda item number 1, approval of minutes of the meetings of December 17th, 2018 and January 14th, 2019 as read. Agenda item number 2, ordinance number 19-2945, authorizing the disposal of surplus personal property owned by the Village of Western Springs Department of Law Enforcement Services firearms, 20 Glock Model 20C Gen 3 with night sights, 1 Glock Model 22 Gen 4W night sights, and 8 Glock Model 23C Gen 3 with night sights. Agenda item number 3, ordinance number 19-2946, authorizing the disposal of surplus personal property owned by the Village of Western Springs Department of Law Enforcement Services, 1 2015 Ford Taurus vehicle. Agenda item number 4, ordinance number 19-2947, approving a conditional use permit, CUP, for the municipal utility and service use consisting of the installation and operation of Village Water Well Number 5 within a dedicated, unimproved portion of Ellington Avenue right-of-way lying south of the Ellington Avenue cul-de-sac and north of the Hillgrove Avenue right-of-way. Agenda item number 5, resolution number 19-2473, in support of a State of Illinois capital bill. Agenda item number 6, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and renew a contract with Chicago Trenchless Rehabilitation of Niles for the 2019 sewer cleaning and televising program at the 2016 pricing schedule in an amount not to exceed $90,000. Note, the 2016 contract was competitively bid. Agenda item number 7, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and renew a contract with Safe Step LLC of Hortonville, Wisconsin for the 2019 sidewalk saw cutting project at $28.50 per inch foot in an amount not to exceed $50,000. Note, the 2017 contract was competitively bid. Agenda item number 8, motion to award a bid for the 2019 standpipe maintenance and repainting project in the amount of $844,240 to lowest qualified responsible bidder, D&M Painting of Washington, Pennsylvania. Agenda item number 7, motion to award a bid for the 2019 high service pump replacement project in the amount of $78,560 to the lowest qualified responsible bidder, Omnipump Repairs, Inc. of Franklin Park, Illinois. Agenda item number 7, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and direct village staff to conduct a solicitation of competitive proposals from a known group of vendors for the procurement and installation of the low-pressure reverse osmosis membranes located at the water treatment plant in an amount not to exceed $150,000 for the installation and maintenance support of each set of membranes, not to exceed the total amount of $300,000 for both sets of membranes. Agenda item number 11, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and renew a contract with Winkler's Tree Service of LaGrange Park, Illinois for the 2019 tree trimming contract at the 2016 pricing schedule. Note, the 2016 contract was competitively bid. Agenda item number 12, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and renew a contract with Homer Tree Care, Inc. of Lockport, Illinois for the 2019 tree removal contract at the 2018 pricing schedule. Note, the 2018 contract was competitively bid. Agenda item number 13, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and renew a contract with Unimax Management Corporation of Chicago, Illinois for the 2019 janitorial services at the 2017 pricing schedule. Note, the 2017 contract was competitively bid. Agenda item number 14, motion to waive the competitive bidding process and award a contract to Keesler Police Supply, Inc. of Jeffersonville, Indiana, an authorized and vetted vendor for 29 Glock number PA 1750302AB model 17 Gen V 9mm safe action pistol, 4.49 barrel, Amerglow Bold NS, 5.5 pound trigger, 3 Glock 17 round 9mm magazines for the purchase price of $12,412, less trade-in value for the surplus firearms of $7,720 for a net cost of $4,692 for use by the Department of Law Enforcement. law enforcement services, I'm sorry. Item number 15. Motion to waive the competitive bidding process and award a contract to Curie Motors of Frankfort, Illinois for the purchase of one 2019 Ford sedan all-wheel drive police interceptor vehicle at a purchase price of $24,741, less a trade-in value of $6,000 for a net cost to the village of $18,741, plus estimated cost of $9,000 to outfit a 2019 Ford sedan with emergency radio, lights, sirens, camera, and microphone equipment, push bars, detainee safety dividers, and exterior vehicle graphics for use by the Department of Law Enforcement Services at the pricing schedule available under the Suburban Purchasing Cooperative. Agenda item number 16. Motion to approve the following reappointments and appointments to various boards and commissions. Reappointments. Economic Development Commission. A. Renee Cozy for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. B. J. Michael Locke for a 3-year term expiring in December 2021. C. Jelani Rucker for a 3-year term expiring in November of 2021. And D. Craig Squillis for a 3-year term expiring in December 2021. Plan Commission. A. Roger Hendrick for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. B. Dennis Kelly for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. And C. Scott McNaughton for a 3-year term expiring in December 2021. Liquor Control Commission. A. Dan Foster as chair for a 3-year term expiring in December 2021. And B. Michael McNeely for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. Board of Zoning Appeals. A. Brandon Calvert for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. B. Michael Pabian for a 3-year term expiring in November 2021. And C. Scott Tusk for a 3-year term expiring in December 2021. Appointments. Economic Development Commission. A. Lynette Bowden for a 3-year term expiring in January 2022. Infrastructure Commission. A. Dan Seiko for a 3-year term expiring in January of 2022. And B. Thomas Matoj for a 3-year term expiring in January 2022.
Thank you very much, Trustee Terrell. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, then may we have the roll call vote, please, Clerk Fitzgerald?
Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee.
Madam Clerk, could you
Oh.
put the mic, thank you.
Yep, pardon me. Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Timick?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph?
Aye.
Trustee Terrell?
Aye.
And President Gallagher?
Aye.
Oh, and President Gallagher.
Aye. Okay, any other business tonight? No? Then we'll move on to the reports, the monthly financial report. Trustee Rudolph?
Thank you, President Gallagher. Everyone should have had the opportunity to see the November and December financial reports in your packets. And before we move to approve those, just first a few highlights. Notably the investments, I know we're all carefully watching the police pension fund, and that did post negative results for December, resulting in a 1-year return of just about 4% for the year. The general fund, on a cash basis, we've ended that with a surplus of about $400,000 or a little over 3%. Highlights there, the detailed revenue was provided in your packets, but just a following few items that exceeded the budgets, just to note or underscore. The sales tax revenues were over budget by about 5.5% and over by the prior year about 6.5%. Income tax was 8.4% above budget. Building permits were almost 10% over budget, and our fines were up 29% over budget. The water and sewer fund, we should note too, also, as we've talked about a few times throughout the year, the consumption build for the year was about 4.2% less than 2017, and I know something we'll continue to watch that carefully as we move ahead with our various plans with our water and sewer. Questions on the reports?
Just to clarify, it was a negative 4% return, right, in the police pension?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Also, we are canceling the 5% pension
And hoping to reschedule it next week is what we're hoping, correct?
Thank you.
But there was negative for the year or just for December?
Well, it was negative for December at 4.92%, but the whole year was about 4.6% negative.
And,
Okay, that's a correction then, correct, to the report?
and,
No? Okay. I may have misread it, sorry.
and then also, we're gonna have an actuary come in, but that would be after the police board meets. Is that kind of the timing in that?
The actuary is working on updating the 2018 results.
Well, right, it was like that sensitivity
Yes,
analysis,
so
but that's gonna
she's-
be like maybe February, March
Yes, she's
cycle?
working
Okay.
on that so that we can have, the 7-year gets updated.
Right.
And that we would have the current information.
Okay, thank you.
And then, okay, sorry. So then, any other questions about that? Okay, I will make a motion then to approve the November and December financial reports.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Yes.
May we have the roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hansen?
Aye.
Trustee Timmick?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Rudolph? is
Aye.
in favor, yes. Trustee Siffman is absent, and Trustee Turner.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to my report. First of all, I'd like to thank Public Works Municipal Services for the outstanding job once again in clearing our roads. I heard more major roads were not plowed as well as ours were this morning, so we, on behalf of the board and our residents, thank you very much for getting out there and getting our roads clear.
And you didn't have a municipal, a snowplow stuck on the tracks like was at LaGrange, keeping me and.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did hear about that.
Yeah.
We had no issues.
There was a snowplow?
Snowplow was stuck on the tracks.
Oh.
We have avoided such things with our good service here.
Of course. My next item, I'm sorry to report that our clerk will be moving on to warmer climates. I think today's weather probably just pushed her right over the edge. But we will miss you, Bridget. You've been such a wonderful addition to the board, but we wish you much success in your new environment in Florida. So, her last day is right now scheduled for March 11th, but that is subject to change. According to our code, we have missed or according to the election code, we have missed the chance to put anyone on the ballot for election for this election cycle. So the board and I will be approving an interim clerk to appoint, we will appoint an interim clerk for the next 2 years to fill that until the spring election in 2021. We are fortunate in that we have several candidates anyway. We have 3 candidates right now that have expressed interest in the post, and this issue will be going to the General Government Committee for review and for advice, and we will make a decision from there. In the meanwhile, we thank Deputy Clerk Haskey for filling in if needed. Appreciate it. On January 15th, I attended the Council of Mayors Executive Committee meeting where we discussed getting more involved to have a bigger voice in Springfield. Now that there looks like there's cooperation down in Springfield and there might be a budget, everybody wants their voices heard, and that's the same with the mayors, the Council of Mayors. So hopefully we'll be able to bring more dollars to our northeastern region here. On January 17th, I attended the Western Cook Municipal Municipal Conference Executive Committee meeting. There is the legislative breakfast planned February 9th. That is a good event. We get national and state leaders there. So if you're available, please sign up. On February 22nd, Director Scott, Manager Velkme, and I met with Susie Wirtz. She's the president and CEO of the West Suburban Chamber of Commerce. She's planning more regional initiatives, including potentially a meeting with regional developers and interested communities. Also, the Chamber's Women in Business Lunch is on February 19th from 11:30 to 1:30 right here at V. They will have guest speaker Deborah Zablodil, and she'll speak on mindfulness in the workplace. So all are invited, not just women. And then on February 22nd, I also met with Community Service Officer Jim Strafacci, with the Hinsdale Humane Society Executive Director Tom Van Winkle. We discussed how jointly we can better serve our residents through increased cooperation between the Humane Society and the village. We discussed licensing, fines for lost pets, and other topics, and streamlining the process for our residents and potentially saving money for the village by eliminating duplication of services. Our finance department and our police department are looking into it now to see whether these potentials are viable. And that concludes my report. Village Manager Belkney?
Thank you, President Gallagher. Due to the dire weather predictions, the village offices will be closed on Wednesday. Those are mostly the non-essential personnel. I don't want to be condescending, but that means that law enforcement services, they will be here in full force. Our fire department will also be here in full force. In fact, we will have additional staffing starting with 6 p.m. Tomorrow evening up to Thursday morning. So we will have that. And also our public works will be on call. And we also have additional information on our website with regard to warming centers in the event that somebody is without heat. They can always call the fire department, and we will help them as much as possible. So we also have some tips on what to do in cold weather, so please take a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And we are urging all people to stay inside. School District 101 will be closed that day. We are still awaiting word from Lyons Township High School about that. And also Thomas Ford Memorial Library will be closed too. The closing also includes that the Recreation Department will be closed and all programs have been canceled. We've canceled all meetings also that were supposed to be, for instance, the Tuesday night pension board meeting is no longer, so. With regard to the tollway, representatives will be here on February 25th to discuss the noise wall study and the proposed noise walls along the village of Western Springs. So they will be here for the first part of the meeting.
Okay.
And that is it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear that Thursday is supposed to be just as cold as Wednesday. Is that still the case?
I looked at the weather tonight just now. They are predicting minus 25 on Wednesday, but then it'll go up on Thursday to a balmy 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, on the plus side?
On the plus side.
Oh, okay.
I've got -3, but
Oh,
what's a
okay.
few temperature
We're in
spots
Chicago.
here?
That's right.
I think if it were standing alone, not next to Wednesday, we would be making similar plans. I think it's just
Right.
because it looks like it's warmer than Wednesday, but I think we
Yeah.
should be very concerned about Thursday as well,
Right.
for all of our services.
Right.
I had a question about the noise wall study. So will we be doing anything to promote that and creating awareness?
We have sent out information on the website about that. It is
Okay.
posted at the website.
Okay.
We have a hard copy at our village hall right here too.
Okay.
And we also have one at the library too.
Okay, all right.
It is quite it's a very technical document also, the noise wall study, so.
Okay.
But do you mean about?
But I
them-
mean to encourage residents if they have questions, is this the
To
time?
attend.
Yes, this is the time. This is
Okay.
the time at that meeting.
And
Okay.
To build on Trustee Rudolph's comment, like, you scared me with it's a very technical document. Is there like a layman's version of it, or is there
They have some summaries there, but I think if we have specific questions, that's the time for us to ask them.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a village Facebook post on that, just similar to how the weather and the closings have been posted? That, I mean,
It is
I haven't seen one.
on the village website. I know that we have it there under the one button where you
Yeah.
tollway information. It should be there, yes.
Okay.
It took quite some time to put it up there because of the size of the document, so.
Okay, but there's a difference between a notification of the meeting versus the actual link to the document,
Oh,
right?
the notification of the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So I just mean if we can get that
Yes,
out to
we
the,
will
again, I
definitely.
really like how the police department and the village are both posting updates on the pages. So this, to me, I think is something too that should be encouraged through those same vehicles. I think
Good.
they get,
We will.
I think they get reshared by a lot of people.
Mhm.
So I think that'd be helpful.
In the study, may I?
Well, please.
The study they have one set of rules, but they review each area to see how it fits in and what would be the best noise solution for a particular area
That is
based
correct.
on
That is
surroundings and vegetation and stuff like that.
That is correct, yes. There are some areas that would not qualify for a noise wall, but that we will probably see them as well.
Okay.
Has staff reviewed the study? Or
We
Jack?
have reviewed it, so we haven't come to any conclusions yet.
Okay.
And sorry, one last question. Will the representatives from the park board be here then as well?
We will invite them.
Okay. We sort
And
of-
I know that the executive director, Walt Naki, knows of that meeting.
Okay.
Because he was at that tollway there.
Okay.
where we discussed it.
Great, thank you. Glad that's happening, thanks.
Okay.
That is it for tonight.
Thank you. Attorney Drusik.
No further report tonight?
All right, thank you. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Timick? Oh. Well, now's your chance.
I'll
buddy.
make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ladies and gentlemen, we stand adjourned. Stay warm, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Ed. Good night. Alice?